McMinnville's second meeting of the budget session. And Claudia, would you please call the roll?
Committee Member Haas.
Present.
Councillor Garvin. Committee Member Hart. Councillor Geary.
Here.
Committee Member Hofstadter.
Here.
Councillor Chenoweth.
Here.
Committee Member Saylor.
Here.
Councillor Peralta. Committee Member Phoenix. Council President Drapkin.
Here.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry.
Present.
Committee Member Maxfield.
Here.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
And Chair Minke.
Here. So, you'll let us know when they come in if I don't see them.
Yes, we can do that. And just because we don't have the full budget committee, it's probably a good opportunity for one of the odd nuances of Oregon budget law. Oregon budget law requires a majority of the seated budget committee members in order to pass a motion or to approve the budget. And because we have a full committee of 14, that requires 8 aye votes to pass a motion, and that is whether there are 8 people present or 14 people present. So just so you know that.
So I'm counting 10. Am I right?
Councillor Garvin has arrived.
Yay.
And Member Hart has now arrived. I think you're only down 2 at this point. I think you've got 12.
Okay, cool. That's the way we want it. All right, I do have a small point of order for this evening. Although usually these last 200 pages go pretty fast, I am asking everyone if you have a question, raise your hand in the chat box or the box, and then I will call on you. It always puts it in order. Please only ask one question, and then if there's other people that have questions, we'll go on to the next person. When we've gone through the list of everybody that has one question, then we'll start back up at the beginning and you can ask more questions. How's that? Does that seem reasonable to everybody? Okay. So we left off on transient lodging tax fund, and I just am kind of bringing it up to see if there's further comments or anything on that particular fund. Hearing none. That was pages 356 to 362. All right, so let's go on to the telecommunications fund, which is page 363 to 369. Any questions or comments on that particular fund? Okay, from then we go to emergency. Yes, was there somebody?
Councillor Peralta is in the meeting now.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. We're almost all together then. All right.
Hey, Kelly, this is Jerry. It would also help if you just gave us a little bit more time to flip through the pages, because what I do is
I'm sorry, I'll slow down.
my questions on the page, and so I got to flip through them.
All right. Does anybody have any questions over the first two funds I've called?
Okay. Chair Menke?
Yes.
I do have a quick question that has absolutely nothing to do with the budget.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure I can answer.
Would it be possible to take this review and discussion of proposed 2021-2022 budget slide off so we can see more people?
I would really like that personally. Thank you. Excellent choice.
Well, I got a button to push.
Chris, there you are.
Oh, there we go.
So
379, any questions on that? Jennifer,
there's some additional information to share around the telecommunications budget, if that was the last one that you called, and that starts on page
364. Well, 363 was fun.
And I don't know, Is Matt in the room or on the call, Chief Scales?
Chief Scales is on the call.
Okay.
All right.
So, he is the person who has the direct line of the information. I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to share what's going on with the our 911 partnership, or I can.
That's actually in emergency communications rather than the telecom fund.
Oh, sorry.
But
Yeah,
that's
that's
but
right.
that's- But that's next, if there are no questions on telecommunications. And Member Phoenix has joined the meeting.
All right, fabulous. All right, we are now in emergency communications, 370 to 379.
There we go.
Matt.
How do I get these mistaken? I don't know.
Matt, do you want to come up and talk about that?
Good afternoon, everybody. So Emergency Communications Fund. So this is the fund that we use for dispatch services. Dispatch services for both public safety entities being police, fire, and then obviously ambulance services. Part of this message is, throughout the years, you normally have seen an increase in the amount of our dues to WICOM, which does pay for our dispatch services. And Jennifer, make sure if I get this wrong that you correct me. But in essence, what we've seen is an increase, like I said, at 3% annually in our dues. This fiscal year, and actually subsequently a fiscal year, there was an increase in the 911 tax to the WICOM, to the PSAPs, which I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, was it 3%?
Went from 75 cents a line to $1 a line.
Yeah.
And then to $1.25.
Okay, yes, it went from 75 cents to $1 per line, and then it increased from $1 per line to $1.25 per line. And that's collected annually by WICOM. And what we did is we had a discussion with the sheriff's office, the sheriff specifically, the board, about with these increase in fees, they're all fee-based. They are not requiring property tax. They don't get that. WICOM does not get those types of money. So they're not dependent upon those types of revenue. The revenue streams that they have are for dues and then these 911 taxes. And with the increased tax, they saw an increase, obviously, in their beginning fund balance and their ending fund balance. And our discussion with the sheriff and ultimately, which was approved by their board, and correct me if I'm wrong, because Chief Lightfoot's on the budget committee for WICOM, is that they have agreed to reduce the police department's annual fee. I believe it's roughly $78,000 for this coming fiscal year. And you will see the stable no increase for the fire fees this year. And that's due in part, like I had mentioned, because they're going to see an increased amount of revenue coming in from the state over the next, I believe, last year, this year, and I believe next year as well. So did I characterize that correctly, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think that's the pertinent information, and it's really great news.
It is good news.
That they've got a really strong base of resources, and that they can share it. The better financial position with their partners. So in terms of the numbers, we had done an estimate prior to them going into their budget process. So once I get a clearer understanding of what actually the number is, I will update that in the final budget that goes to appropriations before the council at the end of June. So since it was an estimate, I didn't want to reduce an estimate by an estimated number. So
Jennifer, what GL number are we talking about?
It is, let's see.
Councilor Garvin does have a question, so after you're done there, Mayor.
78,571 is the budget line.
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, sorry, 78,571 was the savings amount.
Oh, okay. The amount going out, well, actually, I guess it's coming in. It would be a transfer in. If you look on page 376.
Under the transfer in general fund?
Exactly.
Okay.
And so there are 4 items listed there. So what we're talking about is the largest item, the 731,600. That's the one that's going to get the 78 grand more or less reduction in it. And because we did include an escalator in this estimate, the fire contribution will also come down, but not by nearly as much. So so that means that also there's going to be a corresponding reduction in the general fund 99 non-departmental, because there will be we will have to transfer fewer resources than we otherwise thought. So it will affect 2 funds ultimately.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Your question?
Sorry, Kelly. Am I the only one losing Kelly, or is anyone else losing Kelly?
I was losing Kelly. I wasn't sure if she told me I could ask a question yet or not.
Fire away, Adam.
Yeah, Jennifer actually answered my question when my hand was up, but I was just curious if it had been budgeted in here because I hadn't seen it yet. But you guys answered that, and yeah, Matt was correct from my recollection of the budget meeting. It's about 78 or 80,000, somewhere right in there. And then there's another 25 cents that YCOM just hasn't seen. We probably won't see till July or so. So the e-board and the budget committee didn't want to plan on that until we've actually seen that. So next year we might be able to see a continuation of some savings, but that's to be determined. The 911 tax is voluntary for service providers to collect. There's no actual law if they don't collect it. So they could always buck the rule, but all in all, throughout the years, they've always collected it. So we'll hope for some additional savings next year as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it looks like Councilor Minke is having some technical issues. I think she's trying to log back in. Mayor, would you like to, actually, I see Councilor Drabkin has raised her hand. Remy, do you want to go ahead and make your comment or ask a question?
Yeah, I'll ask my question, and I'm sorry, Chief, I know you left the table, but and perhaps Mr. Towery, this you'll be able to answer this question. So I noticed in this section that the city of McMinnville is the largest contributor to YCOM's funding, and then behind that is Yamhill County at 6% less than what the city is contributing. And I see later on where we're told that the YCOM policy board is who decides how to allocate the monies, but what is determinant of the percentages received by YCOM, or what? And perhaps this question is out of line because it's kind of a county question, but who determines how much money the county contributes to YCOM versus the city is essentially my question.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I actually think Chief Lightfoot probably has the best ability to answer that, so I'll turn the stand over to him.
The YCOM agreements that the city have, the entity has with all of its partners, their fee structure are based in 2 different models. One is law enforcement and one is fire. They're similarly based, partially based on population served, partially based on call volume, and partially based on evaluating how much time per call the dispatch center spends on those. They take those formulas and they do them in a 3-year rolling model. So the police, McMinnville Police and McMinnville Fire combined, with the 2 formulas combined, are using more time or have their allocated formulas come in at a higher cost, whereas the county is specifically just the sheriff's office as far as the user of the 911 system. Each of the independent fire districts also are charged independently of the county. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly is having problems with her Wi-Fi, so I think I'll just continue if that's okay, Jeff, until Kelly gets back on.
See, yeah, that's fine. I think at one point Councilor Garvin had his hand up. I don't know if it's still up. I don't see it on the screen.
Yeah, we answered his question before Remy. Okay, so does that finish all of our questions as it relates to emergency communication? Then let's move on to page 381, and this is our street fund, and this is the fund where our state gas taxes come into the city. Any questions on pages 381 through 396? I'll give you a few moments to look at your notes in there. I know we've had a few conversations around the impact of the state gas tax. I see Sal up, and then I see Remy up. Go ahead, Sal.
Thank you, Mayor. Can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. My question about the gas taxes that I had read in a few different places during the legislative hearing session that there was an expected significant drop in ODOT revenue sharing from the gas tax. And so my question for Jennifer was, is the number that you base the government transfers on like an actual estimate that ODOT provided, or was that an internal estimate?
We've also got Mike Bissett and David Wrench on the line too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mike put those numbers together, and I believe they were based on updated ODOT estimates, but he can make sure I'm not lying to you about that.
No, that's correct, Jennifer. Actually, the League of Oregon Cities does a really good job in the spring putting together revenue forecasts for a variety of state revenues that get distributed to the cities. The highway taxes is one of those that they work closely with ODOT to look at what the projected revenues for this fiscal year are going to be, as well as for the next 2 or 3 fiscal years. And so we generally follow the guidance that the League of Oregon Cities puts out, and then we do our own internal tracking. And in this particular fiscal year, and it's tracking very closely. So the other thing that's unknown at this point is we do expect a direct allotment of COVID relief funds related to transportation to be distributed from the state. They were sent from the feds to the state, and those will be distributed out to the city. We've not received information on how much that amount will be, though. So it's not reflected in these numbers.
But just to back Mike up, in the meetings I've been at LOC, because I'm on their transportation policy committee, and then the things we've been talking about at MWAC, which is the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, exactly what Mike has said. There's going to be relief coming to us, but we just don't know what that is at this point. Does that answer your question, Sal?
It did. Thank you for the additional clarification, both Mike and Mayor and Jennifer. Thanks.
Let's go to Remy. She has her hand up, and then Adam, and then I see that Kelly's back, so I'll turn it back over to her after that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Zach had his hand up. No, he's all good. Okay.
I'm down.
Okay.
This is a very straightforward question. In budget highlights, 4th bullet point down, you're talking about potential FEMA reimbursement at the time of the memo. This particular update ends at this point. The funding is uncertain. Here we are a few weeks later. I was just wondering if there is any certainty to that funding. Thank you.
Mike, I'll jump in if you want me to answer that.
Perfect.
Ma'am, we have been notified by OEM, or Oregon Emergency Management, that we will be eligible for FEMA grants for both park maintenance and street. Round figures, we're in the $200,000 plus range for park maintenance. We're in the 90 to 100. I don't have the figures right in front of me, but both some significant amounts of money. We'll be filing those applications with FEMA probably this week. Those applications are due June 30th. And then that kicks off that process where FEMA then interacts with us. It'll probably all be virtual, but they'll review all of our potential projects, both the ones that we've completed and the ones that have yet to be completed. And then we just walk through those projects, and as we pay for them, we get reimbursed to the tune of 75%. Most of the street work projects were already done, I believe.
Thank you. And I was going to ask a follow-up, but I'm just going to restate what you said. We're eligible for up to 75% of expense.
Correct. And that would be for both contracted expenses and for staff time as well, and equipment and material costs as well.
Thank you.
Adam, go ahead.
I'm going to pigtail off Remy's question for Dave or Mike. In the pavement maintenance part of the budget message, you guys mentioned that currently our overlay, our PCI ratings at 69 right now, and 63% of the city's network meets that very good condition threshold. With that kind of being right there at that cusp of doing slurry seal preventative maintenance or getting into that thin overlay work, which is more expensive, how long do we have as a city to kind of still be falling short in our pavement maintenance program and until we get into the more expensive maintenance like you see up in Portland and potholes around and things like that?
Well, Mike certainly can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're right on that cusp, sir. We know that we're not spending as much as we probably need to avoid that downward spiral. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think we're in the tune of 1.25 million, if I remember right. Give me a second here to kind of scroll.
Yeah, that's correct, Dave. That's what you have.
Yes, sir. And so, and we're historically we're in the range of about $500,000 to $600,000 is what we've done. Obviously, with the transportation bond, we were able to kind of hold some of that decline off a little bit, but without continually putting that much money into the system, that curve is going to take back over. We are pretty active in the slurry business. This year, we actually chose to double the size of our slurry project. We have a number of residential streets that are in really good condition and good candidates for slurry, and that can buy us anywhere from 7 to 10 years. But yeah, it's definitely a place that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to resource that, so we're a little closer to that target of 1.25 million. Otherwise, over time, we will be in that situation you described. Off the top of my head, I can't give you a specific. I can't tell you it's going to happen tomorrow or 5 years from now, just because I don't know the figures that well. But it's definitely the trend is headed that way.
That 1.25 is just to maintain our street network. That doesn't account for any of our pretty well-aged fleet, correct?
That's correct. That's just it's an asset management review of our pavement condition. It's that number is related to simply making things black. It has nothing to do with fleet or operations or signage or those things.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
David, I think
Zach, I think you have a question.
Before we move on, I'll just add briefly to David's comments. The slurry has proven really effective for us. In fact, in this year's batch of slurry seals, I think there are some streets that we previously have slurry sealed. Isn't that correct, David?
That's right, Mike. That's correct.
So if you recall, the curve drops, and if you invest in it, it jumps back up. And so this is the second time we've invested in slurry seal on some of the streets that we'll be doing this summer. So it's a super effective way to extend the life of the street at a really effective cost point. So.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Councilor Geary?
Yeah, I had one main question and then one side question popped up in that answer about slurry. Can you remind me, do we self-perform slurry or are we hiring that out?
We contract that out, sir.
Okay.
It's a formal bid process, and we typically get several bids, and then folks come in and do the work. We do self-perform crack sealing, which is kind of our number one first defense tactic. It's the cheapest and probably most effective thing you do. That's true.
Okay.
But we do contract slurries.
Copy
Okay,
then-
Adam, I think Adam's turn. Adam, did you have another question? If not, Zach is going to have full reign.
Go for it, Zach. I guess I forgot to lower my hand.
Full reign, you all heard that.
No.
I guess line item 8210, page 394 is the street tree program. I notice it's I think 15,000. I can't remember. Is that doubling? And if so, is that to pick up and respond to the storm and ice damage, or is that our normal number?
No, sir. We increased that number, and it kind of hits both areas that you talked about. We recognize that we kind of need to be more active in pruning downtown tree stand. That tree stand is getting close to 40 years old now.
Yeah.
But the reality is also we took.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, hopefully that wasn't me making that sound. But,
it was the two Kellys we had logged in.
at any rate, it's indicative of both things. That stand did take some damage. We've done all the initial mitigation work, to eliminate the hazards, but there's still pruning work to be done. So we shoved a few more resources that way.
And are you talking specifically downtown, or are you talking citywide, or a little bit of both? You guys have some extra care and attention to spend downtown and then everywhere to.
Well, actually, the way it works, the city's responsible for the downtown street tree stand.
Yeah.
Which is basically from the north side of Firth to the south side of Fifth.
Mm-hmm.
Residentially, the property owner has responsibility for those trees. Now, with the ice storm this year, and we typically do this for any storm damage, we went in and cleaned up storm damage situations and we mitigated hazards, which we'll typically do related to storm stuff. And we've done that as long as I can remember. But by ordinance, we're directly responsible for the downtown street trees. So that dollar figure, that line item is directly allocated to that tree stand.
Copy that. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. Anybody else have a question on streets? Okay, then we are moving on to airport 397 to 409. A lot of things happening at the airport. Any questions?
Councilor Drapkin has her hand up.
Oh, Councilor Drapkin, go for it.
Thank you. This is right in the very first sentence of our budget highlights, where it says fixed-based operations services are being provided by Potcake Aviation, and then it says which is working out of a temporary office. And I was wondering if you could just expand on that temporary office state a little bit, since it made its way in here. It seems to hold significance. Thank you.
I'll give Mike one last opportunity to demonstrate some historical knowledge of airport operations and management.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. So the modular that Potcake's currently operating out is on airport property, but it's a short-term solution. Those that have been at airport for a while will recall we had some schematics done and some siding work done for the placement and construction of a permanent airport terminal, if you will, that the fixed base operator could operate out of. This building, the temporary modular, is located in that spot, but certainly is not intended to be a long-term solution. So we're in discussions with Potcake and a couple other airport tenants on several fronts, and leases and terms of leases and lengths of time that modular buildings can be on the airport as part of that discussion. Amanda's been a great help with some of that, and I am hopeful that it certainly probably won't be before I'm gone, but I'm hopeful that in the near term there'll be some solutions brought forward that'll solidify both the terms of the short-term plans and the pathway for long-term solutions.
Okay, any other questions? I'm looking. Have you all had time to get to the transportation fund? Page 410 to 421. Transportation fund. Okay, here, yes. Do I have one? Zach?
Yes. Sorry, let me lower my hand. In this section, I know it's very recently passed, when probably postdates the formation of this year's budget. But given that we have new alternative transportation, cool, new, exciting alternative transportation plans, do we have any money in the budget this year to start doing or implementing any of those pedestrian-friendly projects that were in that update to the TSP we just put in the last month or so? Or are we too close this year and should start talking about that for the next fiscal year? Does that question make sense?
Well, I'll take a stab at it, and then I think perhaps Heather will chime in. But that work that ODOT is doing for the Highway 99 corridor is pretty well an ODOT-driven project, which is laying the groundwork for some potential projects when they come through and do some overlay. There certainly is an opportunity for the city to participate in some of that, but there's nothing built into this budget that would advance that particular corridor project. Is that the one you were asking about, Zach?
Yeah, I think he's asking about the Oregon 99W Trans Active Plan.
That whole plan.
Active Trans Plan, yeah. Counselor, we haven't amended our TSP for that. We haven't even adopted that plan yet. We've only presented it to you. So our next process probably this year would be going through an adoption process for that plan. And we're going to be starting, in fact, it's in this fund. We're going to start our TSP update, and those discussions for the local improvements for the Greenway on Davis would come up in that TSP update. And then through that process, they would be identified as projects and funded in the future.
Got it. That makes sense. Larry, I saw you turned on. Did you want to?
Jerry?
Oh, I was just going to reiterate basically what Heather said.
Cool. I've just been on so many groups that voted yes to that, having been on that committee. So I think I got in my head that we were moving. But okay, copy that. Thanks.
Jerry Hart, did you have anything to say?
Oh, I did. I had a question. This loops back to something that I think Mike said the other day about doing the traffic count on determine whether a traffic signal is needed at Michael Book and Baker Creek. And my question was on the timing of that, Mike. I know you mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned that you want to wait until the high school's back in so you can capture the high school traffic. And believe me, there's a lot of it. Sometimes it's difficult to get out of Crimson Court when the high school crowd is either going, east or west. But also we have the huge number of residential units going on out there. And so my question is, wouldn't it make sense to wait until to do the traffic count until some of those residences out there out Baker Creek are occupied? Because that's going to add a heck of a lot of trips to that road.
It's a great point, Jerry. And there's sort of a trade-off between the construction traffic that's happening to build those houses and the permanent traffic that'll happen once they're occupied. But the fact that we're starting to see construction out there, I think the timing is probably right to this fall move forward with the study to see how close we are, or if it's warranted now to move forward with the traffic signal. And the forecasting work that the traffic engineer will do can take into effect, say, issued building permits or available lots in a subdivision that's been platted to help with traffic forecasts. So it's a great question, but I think probably this fall the timing will be right to move forward with that study.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, for the developments you're referencing, there was the Baker Creek North one, which has the larger number of homes that's under development right now. There was a traffic impact analysis done for that for that project, and it indicates in the traffic impact analysis which phase of the subdivision warrants the signals being implemented. So when Mike's team puts that together with their engineer, they'll be able to access that information.
Okay, thank you.
Zach, go for it.
I was putting it down. My question was going to be a follow-up to Jerry's to see if the TIA that the developer did can talk to the impact analysis that we'll do for that light specifically, and it sounds like they will. So that was my question.
Yeah, that's usually the first step that the traffic engineer will do, is gather all background material they can, including any recent traffic work that had been done in the area. So.
Any other questions on this particular fund? If not, we'll move to park development, 422 to 431. Anyone for park development, or have we covered that fairly well in other places? I see no hands.
Kelly, I just want to congratulate the city on how it used the bond money from 2000. I thought that was just really terrific, the way that that money was allocated over the years. So I think it's very well done.
Thank you.
Okay. I would love to just share the positive sentiment of reading through the Park Development Fund historical highlights and all of the comings together of community from 1906 forward, and just seeing that effect through our parks over and over, that really our community has built our parks time and time again. I thought that was really lovely and great to read in this document.
And just to tag on to that, Remy, our partnerships of being able to get help from civic groups along the way. I think we've maximized those dollars that Jerry were talking about to the nth degree. And then coming down to the very end in that the park in North Baker Creek area, where we really had to partnership to get money to do it. Great job.
Anyone else? Susan, do you want to say anything? Okay. I see no other hands, so we're moving on to debt service fund. And that is page 432 to 440. Anyone for the debt service fund? Giving you a couple minutes to look. All right, I think we're moving on to the building fund, which is 441 to 454. Anyone have questions for the building fund? And I just wanted to mention, I hope everybody's noticing the iconography on all of these different fund pages. It's kind of cool to see these new icons and stuff. So anyone on that particular fund, the building fund? If not, we will move to wastewater.
Councilor Geary has his hand up.
Oh, okay, I should have known. Okay, Zach.
Thanks. That was probably a silly question, but one that was odd enough that I noticed, I figured I'd ask. And being a builder, I know that we have one, but I don't see the building official in here. Is he just listed as a more banal job title than building official or head chief building? You know, where's Stuart in here? I'm assuming we're paying him, but
we are paying him. We're paying him under so the way we were able to bring in a quality caliber building official like Stuart Ramsey to McMinnville is we have him under a part-time contract. So you should see him under personal services temporary.
I see contract plan review, contract inspections.
No, so under 7,000-15 with the salaries and wages temporary building official 3/4 FTE.
Extra help. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, so any other questions on that one? No. Okay, moving to wastewater services, page 457 to 467. No questions? Councilor Zach Geary.
Thanks. I don't know if it's in here, but my question is a little bit around the loss of the creamery. I know they were quite the heavy user fee supplier to our revenue stream on this. as they were a big discharger. I'm wondering if there's just perhaps a comment on losing such a revenue stream, if it actually offsets the not having to do a certain amount of stuff over there versus the revenue we're going to lose, or if we have if there's a heavy concern, and if so, should we be thinking about ways we can help or offset that in the formulation of this budget?
So I know there are costs associated with managing that permit program that we may not fully expend as long as the creamery is not operating. I know Mike's on the line. I don't know if Leland is on the line, but one of them can be better suited to answer the details. I'll see them both. So I'll defer to whichever you gentlemen want to dive in first.
Basically, I'll go ahead and speak up first, I guess. For the creamery, the loss of the creamery, we were looking at around $35,000 a month hit in our income. But also in that offset, we used a lot of extra chemicals in the summertime to help treat and manage the facility. So not sure how much of a hit we really are going to take until we go through this season. And they still are doing a little work over there. Not sure exactly what is going on yet, but they've said they may end up discharging some to us. Not sure exactly how that may play out, though.
Are they still currently paying on that, or will they?
We have not received the latest SMR from them, their report, to find out what exactly we are going to be getting from them for this.
Okay.
No other questions?
And Zach, just another piece, Mac Water and Light providing the water. We know that with the creamery being down, they were one of our largest water customers.
Okay, we're moving on to Wastewater Service, Environmental Services, 478.
Looks like Remy got her hand up there, Kelly.
Okay, Remy?
Thank you. Thanks, Zach. I'm just wondering if we could get some follow-up on that situation which Zach just asked about as it plays out. Perhaps a memo as things develop, or a couple memos as things develop, so we're kept in the know. Thank you.
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving along to Environmental Services again, 478 to 479. Anybody for that one? All right, conveyance systems, 480 to 487. Nothing for conveyance systems? All right, wastewater capital, 488 to 498. Wastewater capital. Getting down there, guys. Moving on to ambulance, which I believe is mostly zeros. Anyone for ambulance fund?
Yeah, that's just the expense history from the previous 2 years before the ambulance was rolled into the general fund.
Right. That's 499 to 504. No further questions on that one. Information services. That is 505 to 529. I don't think I have anything in between. I see no hands. So we have the insurance services fund, which I believe is our last one. And that's 528 to 538. Seeing no further questions.
Oh, Allison.
There's a hand.
Allison, go
Yes.
for it. Good to see you.
Hello. So I noticed you put in an extra contingency for workers' comp, and I wanted to ask, is that because you think the multi-line insurance credit that you might lose is going to outweigh any savings you might have from CIS moving to SAFE? Because theoretically, with your payroll down and your eligibility for the OXA program, and the fact that SAFE is supposed to offer more competitive rates, I would have thought that your workers' comp insurance would have gone down, not up.
So
let me try to address that. I guess the first thing, Allison, where the extra contingency, where are you seeing that? I think there's just the one contingency, or did I somehow put in two?
You said under the narrative, CIS is working on a significant change. For this reason, a higher contingency for the year is budgeted compared to the past in case the new cost structure combined with the possibility of a reduced multi-line insurance credit is reduced for property and insurance liability lines.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah, it's not that it's just there's more money in it, correct? Okay. So there are still a number of unknowns associated with the workers' comp. And some of them have to do, the city of McMinnville has gosh, I forget what it's called. The reason why you see so many lines is because we pay a smaller amount up front and then keep the lines of workers' comp open for 4 years.
Retro plan, right?
A retro plan, there you go. And instead of just paying lump sum at the beginning of the year. And it's worked out to the city's financial benefit to do this, and we are hopeful that we will be able to maintain it, but we still do not know yet whether we will be eligible for that. So my main concern is that we may have kind of a double whammy if we need to pay a full year, as well as the tails of the prior insurances under CIS. So it's still not clear to me how all that's going to play out. We do anticipate that the rates will go down under SAFE, but again, we haven't gotten the data. So I get nervous. So I like to have the contingencies so that if things do come up, not aces, 2s and 3s, we have the financial wherewithal to pay what we need to pay this year, do the financial planning for years out, and have a better understanding going forward of what the cost will be. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, that said, does anyone have any further questions? We're at the end of this particular budget. Sherry.
So I just want to jump in on the workers' comp conversation, Jennifer and Allison. So I am the treasurer for St. Paul, and we have the exact same situation. We have CIS for our insurance. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have the exact same situation. We have CIS as our insurance holder, and we switched from CIS to SAFE. And I would like to know who our insurance carrier from McMinnville is, because we've gotten our full quote. I understand we do not have nearly as many as employees, but we did ask about 2 months ago to have them give us a quote. Our rates dropped 2/3. And so I am, if for City of McMinnville, if the rates don't drop unless you are in a completely different plan, switching from CIS to SAFE, I would think that you ought to be able to build in some significant cost savings on workers' comp. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I am still very unhappy from last fall or last spring when we went through our budget exercise and we showed no impacts or forecasts for employee layoffs. And I think that it's easy to get too conservative in reaction to the fact that we didn't do a very good job last spring, and now we're trying to be overcompensating this spring. I think we pay you good bucks to be realistic, not so conservative. And I just think it's unrealistic to think you're not going to have any cost savings from switching to SAFE. But I'm over and out on that.
Any comments? Okay, thank you, Cherry. Again, I'm going to ask, does anyone have further questions? Yes, Remy. Can't hear you.
Oh, still?
Now I can hear you.
Great. Just before we wrap up, I really wanted to say that I greatly appreciated this budget document. The summaries at the front of each section helped to make this a very digestible document, something that can be, I imagine, can be overwhelming. It's a large document, so that makes it very digestible. I also appreciate the additional staff time in going through and putting together the paper copies for us. I know that's a lot more work than just hitting send on an email or uploading a document, but for me, it really helps to have the printed version. And so I just really appreciate this. I felt it was very thorough, very digestible, very accessible. And I also appreciated all the questions that were asked at the forefront and the finance director's really thorough answers to those questions. It helped me a lot in this process, and I appreciate everybody's participation and feedback. And thank you, Chair. I felt like this was a really good process, and I look forward to the next one as well.
Sherry again.
I just want to second everything Remy said. The preliminary information on every single section was just outstanding. Jennifer, you and your team, just outstanding job. Kudos.
Well, if I can jump in on this, I don't know if we have mentioned Rhonda Gretson's name in the process.
Well, we all know Rhonda's a good person.
She has, it's due to Rhonda that we were able to update the new branding icons throughout the document. She was willing to take the time to integrate that, and the branding team was really helpful in getting us early copies of that information to be able to include. And I do think that's meaningful, and I'm glad we were able to do that. And Rhonda puts together the whole book, but all of the writing really does come from every single department that you've talked to over the course of these last two nights. So this is, one of those examples of a completely cross-city collaborative project. And Rhonda is the project manager for getting this done. And so we wouldn't have it without her. And I just can't thank her enough for all of her efforts and just excellence in her work product. So
kudos to Rhonda. Very much appreciated.
Thanks.
I love the icons. I thought they were so cool on this. So thank you so much, Rhonda. I also want to thank the budget committee and everybody. I mean, I don't think I'd ever attended a budget committee that everybody was there, and everybody's here, I think. It was wonderful. I congratulate you new budget committee members. You had good questions. And thank you all so much for participating. It was wonderful, all the participation. It was, I think, personally, one of the best ones I've ever attended myself. So we're at that point in time now where
Chair Minke,
going to ask
Peter
you
Hofstetter has his hand up.
One more. Okay,
yeah,
Peter, go for it.
Yeah, Zach, you're
All right,
pointing the wrong way.
Just wanted to earn my pay here, and I had a couple of thoughts on the whole budget process, and I didn't know if you wanted those now or wait till we're done with the next section, or how you want to do that.
Well, you can give them now.
All right. I would agree that I think Jeff and Jennifer and the team did a really nice job. It was thorough. It was well done, and it's been an ugly year. So and that's no reflection on them. Just with COVID and all the other things, there's a lot of variables. If I understand all of our conversations, we sort of have, and I don't know what the we is. That's part of my question. Is sort of three to-dos. One is there was a request early on for monthly financial statements. And I talked a little bit to Jeff and Jennifer about that, and I just had a couple of thoughts on that. And then there was also a conversation about the budget process itself and some revisions that are due from, sort of dragged on. And then the third thing, which I think is going to be really a challenge, and having done this more than once, unfortunately, is, I think Jeff mentioned that there's an ongoing sort of $1.5 or $2 million hole going forward, and how we deal with that as a city. And I guess, Kelly, my question was, I don't know how, is that going to be something that the staff prepares some thoughts and options, and the board or the city council or the budget committee or somebody reacts to it? Is there going to be a subcommittee? I mean, just how that's going to happen. I would like to, if there is going to be subcommittee or more work, I would be happy to volunteer to participate in some of those conversations. As I say, it's not a lot of fun to do most of those things, but I've been beat up enough in the past that I'd be willing to share some of that.
You like being beat up. It's fun.
It's easier to be beat up being retired than it is to have to go in every day. So
we have discussed some of these. So do you want me to respond now, or do you have some other points?
Yeah, just in one real quick thing with the monthly financials, and I talked a little bit to Jennifer the other day about it, and I know we're struggling with budgets and stuff, but and this may be overspeaking or overstepping my bounds, so Jennifer or Jeff, you can throw something at the screen if you want. But I want to make sure that they have the resources, which may be financial or people, that they need to sit down with, whether it's our IT vendor, whether it's the auditors, whether it's whoever it is, to sit down and sort of put together, is there a way to patch together a reasonable, whether it's monthly, every other month, quarterly kind of financial statement that everybody would be comfortable with. I know in my world, in both for-profit hospitals and not-for-profit hospitals, you lived and died by, the first 8 to 15 days of the month, where somebody was beating down your door saying, where's the monthly? And I get city and municipality finances are different, but we probably, especially going into some difficult conversations with people and expenses, ought to have all the information we can get. And I think Jennifer and her crew are trying as hard as they can, but I want to make sure we give them the resources they need to be successful, I guess is really what I'm saying. So
thank you. And I absolutely agree. I appreciate those comments, Peter, very much. I think there will be necessarily need to be some additional resources to do this. The way the computer program and everything works, they don't necessarily pull this all together in that type of format easily. That's why we have Rhonda and other people. So I kind of want to say to you, as we looked at this, we were talking today, Remy and the mayor and I and Jeff, and we were discussing I don't know that we would ask for monthly, quarterly financial statements. Seems enough. I did suggest to Jennifer a possible dashboard type of thing that we might get monthly, but she's taking it under advisement at this point. The budget revision, you mean the actual, how we're going to put it together? We're actually going to sit down and kind of put a suggested thing together and present it to the council. So all of you will know that we will be doing that probably fairly soon. We've taken very seriously your comments, and we want you to be happy. So believe me, we will be trying hard to provide something, and you give us your comments and then we'll revise it as necessary. I do want to talk about an amendment that we do need to add, which is $7,081,800 for the American Recovery Plan grant that will go into Fund 5. That would be an amendment. I think we are not going to back down on the desire to bring the budget ending reserve somewhere in the line of 17%. So I just, that's going to stay. So it will require us to continue to work on being efficient with our funding. Does anyone else want to add to this? I mean, I'm just kind of going on what I've discussed with other people. That said,
Cherry has raised her hand.
Cherry, please.
So I just want to, I'm a little confused by what you just said, Kelly. Are you indicating that you're going to take that entire $7 million and put it into a reserve fund?
No, well, it's going into Fund 5, which is special assessments, I believe.
So,
But I mean, are you planning to keep it in reserve?
no. So I'll let Jennifer fill in the blanks here, but we still don't know what the amount is. We had hoped that that amount would be published. We're using previously published estimates of the amount because we know we're going to get the money, and for a sense of transparency, we think it's important to budget that as an income and as an expense and do it in a separate fund where it really stands out as a standalone number. That doesn't, there's no, we haven't put together a plan for how we deploy those resources. I'll remind you that during my introduction of the budget, I presented an alternative to do that, which I think can run parallel to a revenue conversation that the Council Budget Committee and community can have over the next several months. We are under no immediate pressure to spend those federal dollars. We have yet to know what the rules are around those dollars. The draft rules were published about a week ago. And so we're simply budgeting that number as a placeholder. If the actual allocation is published before this budget goes to the council for adoption, and we expect it will be, we will suggest an amendment to match that published amount should it be become known to us before the end of June. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to add any more substance that she would like to on this issue.
I think everything's been covered. It's just we don't intend to spend all of it in a single year, but just because of timing, I think Jeff also mentioned that it's possible that we actually would get the full amount during before fiscal year 2022 ends. So this just gives us the most flexibility to be able to, from an accounting perspective, bring that money on board.
Can I ask a question? Are you planning to include the public in your decisions about how you're going to spend that money?
I think that's,
yeah.
I think
in
that,
Jeff's
I think that public
presentation,
engagement is important. And I talked about that during the presentation.
I heard you, but I didn't get clear.
Well, I specifically said that public engagement is an important component of this project.
And how is that going to happen?
The council and the budget committee will make that decision. That's not a staff decision to make.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anybody else with questions? Zach?
I have a couple little follow-ups kind of in Peter's vein, but before I do, I don't know if I heard the answer to Mr. Hofstadter's question about if and how we're going to directly head-on tackle the $1.5 million continuous goal. Were there answers to that?
Well, we will be discussing different revenue possibilities as we go through this year. I guess I'll let Jeff handle that one, but yeah, there's a fair amount of discussion that that's a goal this year.
Right, so that sort of reflects back on some of the revenue discussion in both the budget message and my presentation last week. I am proposing that we, in essentially a series of work sessions, convene the council and budget committee to evaluate a variety of revenue sources for consideration, come to some, small list of items to be specifically and in a I think, a pretty detailed fashion for us to analyze how we would do something like fill in the blank revenue, what sort of funds it would generate, to what uses it would be deployed, and then engage the community in some public engagement around those issues and move towards a place where you can build some community support and consensus around a revenue strategy if that's the desire of the council and the budget committee. But I think it's a deliberate process. I would suggest that it starts relatively early in the fiscal year because if there is going to be a change in how we provide revenue to support the services that this organization provides, you need to start that conversation soon because the downside to starting it is you end up with another budget this year, next year, sort of like this year's budget, only the hole's bigger because we've got another year.
Yeah, keeping in mind too that the entire fire districting thing might have some revenue options with it.
And that's part of the longer term issue that that's still yet to play out.
Peter, what are your thoughts on? Did that get at what you were?
Sorry. Yeah, it does. I don't want to open up a can of worms here because, but I think part of the conversation is new revenue, and we ought to take advantage of anytime you can get new revenue, but you have to be prepared. You have to be competitive too with the revenue. So you don't want to add a bunch of stuff that makes, whatever businesses or whatever not want to be here. And you also have to think in terms of timing given COVID and all that. But I think the other part of the conversation is just services in general. Are you happy with how X works and Y works? And, because it's not only the revenue part, it's the expense part. And I will tell you that just laying people off and cutting services to balance a budget is probably the worst thing in the world you can do, because then nobody's happy. Employees are unhappy. The community's unhappy because you can't service, you aren't providing a level of service. So I think it's just a bigger conversation, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Okay. So in
Zach, I think we've got Chris next.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, since we've headed down this path, when we do go into these conversations on potential revenue streams, I would love to hear some information brought to us on what not having those revenue streams means in terms of, how many employees are we going to, would it require to bring our budget into balance, or we want it to be to build up our reserves where we want them, and what does that mean in actual loss of services? So that as we're making decisions, we have a pretty good grasp on what does this translate out to, because being told that it's going to mean loss of services means nothing if we don't have something to equate that out to. So as you're bringing this forth to us, I don't want it just to be about a conversation about we need money and this is where we're going to get it from. I want an explanation as to why we need money as opposed to making cuts at the same time.
Yeah, and I agree, Councilor Chenoweth, that was part of the presentation. I think that you need to be able to talk to the community about what's the service level impact of bringing in revenue or not bringing in revenue. I think it gives us the opportunity to continue and refine the conversation we started about core services that we incorporated into this year's budget for the first time, so that you, for lack of a better term, you have a value proposition that you present to the community.
Exactly. Because one of the things I look at, I asked for that a while back. I was presented some numbers that showed over 6 years, we've had a 33% increase across the board in our payroll. And some of that can be explained in PERS, but some of that is clearly an increased in staffing in 6 years. That doesn't align with as much growth in the city as we've seen. So I'd like to see what the options are and what this plays out to being, rather than just assuming we have to increase fund gathering from our constituents. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. Zach?
Yeah, on the core services part, tagging on that, while I found it fascinating and appreciated each department's individual work in that, I think, which is what you're referencing, that they ran their own services through that core services thing. I also think we need to break the silos and have it more holistically from this group to understand, weigh, and decide on what the core services are as a whole as we move forward. And again, there's a big difference between what each department's core services are and what the city's overall core service is to the taxpayer. And I think that's a big difference. And I think we have to make sure we're having that conversation soon before I think it needs to be done so we can impact the next budget for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the next heavy lift on the core services conversation, is to sort of look beyond department boundaries to figure out how we can fairly evaluate and judge services across the organization. That makes sense to me too.
Other questions?
There's
Yeah.
my one, but I'll stand down until I get my next one.
I don't see any other hands is the problem, so I think you get another one now.
Not a problem for me.
There's Debbie Harmon Ferry in the queue.
Oh, well, she popped right in there. So I'm sorry, Zach. Debbie, go for it. That's what you get for hesitating.
I just wanted to break up Zach's comments. I guess I would, are we going to be able to look at furloughed employees the same way? Does it have to be across the board unilateral, or if we decide on core services not siloed, would there be situations where we might want to unfurlough some employees but keep some other areas furloughed?
Yeah, I don't know that we would necessarily be talking about furloughs specifically. It's also, I think, important to note that we did exercise some discretion about furloughs. We didn't furlough across the board. We furloughed about a third of our employees, and there are some work groups who furloughed and some who did not. So we already exercised judgment when we made that decision. My goal is to help the council and the budget committee have a conversation that's more sustainable than periodic furloughs as a solution.
Okay, I'm going to let Zach have another question, and then we'll call on you, David.
So I know Peter re-asked the question, but we had a good, healthy discussion as the sort of opening salvo in the budget about the process, and I heard Chair Menke's answer in that Mayor and Chair Menke and Council President Drabkin are going to draft the solution for the new process.
We're going to draft a suggested draft solution, and you guys get to tell us what you think, okay? I mean, it's not up to us. We're just telling you we think it'd be a little easier for us to come to you with something very much like what you've asked for and see how you felt about it.
Yes, you're going to do that. And then that's about how we take the finished budget, review it, and process it and approve it. I also would like to...
You're asking questions of staff, having an opportunity. It has to do with finding out what staff wants to do as far as looking initially at the budget under the parameters they get from Jeff. So I'm thinking of at least 4 meetings, and I'm overstepping myself because I just don't want to commit myself at this point in time. We haven't really talked it through.
So I also would like to add a process discussion about how the council gets involved when the department heads crack open the budget at the end of the calendar year, beginning of the calendar year, so that the document hasn't been created yet, but we get to have, and that could be dovetail well with sort of those revenue questions, those hard questions that maybe what Peter was getting at, and how our goals and objectives in the current markets are going to impact the budget before it's written, before the 550 pages are memorialized. I would like a suggestion in that suggestion that you guys are going to provide to us on fixes to or improvements to the process. I'd like how this group, not just council, but the budget committee gets involved when those books get cracked open by the department heads, please.
Good point. Okay. And we are looking all the way into November and moving forward. So hopefully that will help. Okay. Let's see. Meredith and then Remy.
So I really appreciated the email that Jeff sent out with the revenue options and the analysis that Eugene did. And I was wondering if there were other cities that are similar to ours that we could easily compare their budget. I don't know. I mean, if they have a 500+ page budget, it probably would take too much time, but I would love to be able to see how much other cities that are our comparable size spend on various departments. Is that possible? Do you have cities you would recommend we compare to if I wanted to try? I don't know. And also like cities that are our same size, what revenue streams they were using. So I don't know if anyone has the answer.
Sure. So yes, I think setting a context is important, and ultimately communities do what they feel is in the best interest of their community, and those decisions are sometimes informed by what other jurisdictions do. We typically look at the 4 cities above us in population and the 4 cities below us in population. That's just sort of a not very elegant way to get a swath of communities. It keeps you away from cities that are really 50,000 and over, and it keeps you away from cities that are, much lower than 34, 35, 32,000 kind of thing. Interestingly, if Newburgh actually is the 5th city down from us at about 24,000, we'll sometimes throw them in because they're a close neighbor. But typically 4 up and 4 down. The trick is that not those 4 up and 4 downs don't necessarily all provide the same suite of services. And so you need to pay attention to what services communities provide. I think Kaiser is in that 4 up list. Kaiser doesn't have a fire department. If you include Newburgh as a close neighbor, they don't do fire, they don't do parks and rec. And so even cities of similar size have a different mix of services. You also have to look a little bit more broadly when you're comparing airport functions in particular, because not that many of us have small general aviation airports. So there's lots of what ifs that you need to take a look at to make sure you're giving a fair comparison. But there are some things that almost every city does, like long-range planning and short-range planning and processing building permits. Most cities have some form of a utility, whether water or wastewater, but not everybody. I think that's a useful exercise. It helps sort of set the boundaries. The League of Oregon Cities has a lot of comparative data in some of the links that we sent you that they don't necessarily aggregate it by all 17 types of revenue, but if you look, say, at the report on franchise fees, you can see all of the franchise fees for all of the cities, and you can kind of get a sense of where we would land. If you look at the systems development charge study, you can again see where we land in terms of the context of cities that have systems development charges.
Okay, I thought I had somebody else on the line.
Oh, the city attorney tells me Kaiser has a fire department. I think that they're a fire district, are they not?
No, but Newburgh has one.
Okay. Oh, okay. So there's, anyway, never mind. My point is some cities do things and other cities don't do the same things, so.
Okay,
Sorry
I don't know. It's like a tie between Remy and Adam. Remy, do you want to say something?
Very briefly, I just want to check in with Amanda in this forum so we're all on the same page. If in terms of this budget process meeting that Zach was just referencing and asking some questions about, if we want to have discussions on the front end, say if I want to talk to every single counselor about this, are there any serial meeting laws I need to be thinking of in that process, or because it's not because it's not subject to the same rules as some other decisions we make, do we not need to worry about that?
So, so as part of the budget committee, if you talk to a quorum of the budget committee, that is problematic under the public meetings laws.
Regarding the process of the budget, if that's the only thing that's being discussed, is the process in which we handle the budget, the timing, the meetings, the formatting of it, but nothing inside of the budget itself.
So while Amanda sort of mulls the legal notion, let me suggest that the idea would be, we've heard a lot of comments about the process up until now. We've recorded all that, and we'd like to work essentially with council leadership to craft 1 or 2 options for this body to consider in the context of a meeting, of a public meeting or a series of public meetings, so that any deliberation you have, any feedback you give us is going to be captured in the context of a public discussion and ultimately some action taken.
I think that's perfect. And Amanda, if you think about it, if you'll just send me an email, because I don't want to inadvertently violate any serial meeting laws, and the potential that counselors will want to speak with council leadership going into this process, I think is high.
Okay, Councilor Garvin.
Well, let's give Amanda a chance. I sort of let her mull that over, but she may want to add some value here.
Well, I was gonna say, I wanted to pull up the statute real quick. So basically what it says, if you are deciding on or deliberating toward a decision on any matter, so if it's something that the budget committee would be considering, you can't talk about it with a quorum of the budget committee. or if it's something that the city council would be deciding on, you wouldn't be able to even talk to a quorum of the city council. But I'd have to look at our code about how the agenda for the budget committee is set, because my thinking is that it's probably not a vote by the budget committee that's required. But if like a motion's going to be made, then yes, that would be something that would be prohibited under the public meetings laws.
And the other thing we can do is we can always seek and collect that feedback to staff members. I mean, any member of this body can talk to any staff person and there's no problem. The staff person can compile that information and feed it back to the whole body. That will work. So there's definitely a way to get that exchange of information.
Well, to be clear, case law suggests that serial communications can be conducted through staff. So yes, you can email it to us. We might not be able to spread it to the whole like that. So we can talk more offline about what the process will look like.
We would do it in a lawful manner.
Yeah, I'm not trying to solve a problem we don't have. I just thought this was a good format so that we would all get the same information at the same time.
Thank you, Remy. We appreciate it. Councilor Garvin. Councilor Garvin.
Thank you, Chairman Gee. So my question and comment kind of dovetails off what Peter opened up about revenues or possible revenues, and with that comes expenses in my mind. And so I was curious if there's a threshold we as a city have, either by charter or by policy, for contracted labor or consultant studies on what that threshold is before it would have to come to council, if it's already in a department's budget. So I know if something's in a department's budget, when a consultant study comes to council, we're just told it's already in our budget. But looking at revenues going forward, I would just like us as council to have a more in-depth understanding and feel of how much money we're spending on consultants or contracted labor to basically have our foot on the gas to get things done quicker than we can really afford to, and how much that would lower our $1.5 million hole every year.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
You're saying consulting services you should have a better look at? Is that what you're saying specifically?
Yeah, or I don't know if there is a threshold right now that if say ice storm cleanups, if that came in at over 50,000 or over 100,000 and it wasn't in a department's budget, that comes to us because it's not in the budget. It's an amendment expense if it's not contingency. But if it's in a department's budget, is there a threshold that departments just aren't farming stuff out to consultants all the time without counselors really ever being aware of it?
Councilor Garvin, I can answer that question. There is a resolution that was passed some years ago that it's $100,000, one that the city manager is signing authority. So once it's over $100,000, any contract has to come to council for approval.
Thanks. That's good to know, Amanda.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah, this is just a creative question for Amanda. If we're having a discussion regarding the budget committee, the quorum of the budget committee would be 8 people. So if we're having a discussion regarding the budget committee, 6 of us could have conversation regarding that. Am I thinking correctly?
No.
Correct. Correct. Yep. As long as it didn't filter out in, one person going off and talking to somebody else, correct. That's where you get into trouble, and we really, recommend avoiding that. But you're correct. If it was less than 8 people, that would not be a quorum, and thus would not violate the public meetings law.
Okay, thank you.
But think carefully about the mix, because if you got more than 3 counselors, you got a problem. Okay, who else? Anybody?
I would just say my general rule of thumb is not to talk to more than 2 counselors at any time, just to not risk it, not risk making a mistake in that.
You just don't want to do it. It's not good. Okay, again, do we have more questions? Counselor Zach Geary.
Thanks. I'm just kicking around. I think Cherry brought it up, and I heard Jeff talk about the public engagement process related to how and when we spend on what the CARES money. But I'm wondering if, and I know we have time while we wait to hear the details and things, but I'm wondering if that wouldn't allow us to discuss and hammer out what specifically the public engagement process is while we wait to know what we're talking about. I just want to make sure that doesn't go by under the river, under the bridge, and we miss our opportunity to do that in a meaningful way. As we talk about formalizing processes, I'd like to add that to the mix of things I'd like to formalize more than, we'll make sure we talk to people.
Absolutely. It's on my list. Who else? Zach, do you have any others?
No, it's just reflex. Keep the dang hand up now.
Anybody else? I hesitate to ask this, but we are getting to that point where I want to make a recommendation to approve the 2021-2022 proposed budget and tax rate.
We're going to share. Let me share. We need to share a screen. There's some specific language we want you to consider here. So here we go. So you have 2 jobs tonight. One is to approve the proposed budget, and the other is to set a tax rate. Oops. So here is an option for you to consider that would result in the approval of the budget document that you have been presented, and also place the roughly $7 million of federal American Recovery Plan grant funds into Fund 5.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second it, if I'm allowed.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Peter. Okay, I think I got Peter right. All right. So I'm going to ask for a vote, and I'd like to have Claudia call everyone by name.
She's on her way. She's on her way up to the mic now.
Okay. Let's see. I'll go back to my list here.
Committee Member Haas,
I oppose.
Counselor Garvin,
Yes.
Committee Member Hart,
Yes.
Counselor Geary,
Aye.
Committee Member Hofstadter,
Approve.
Counselor Chenoweth,
Aye.
Committee Member Sealer,
Yes, I approve.
Counselor Peralta,
Aye.
Committee Member Phoenix,
Oppose.
Council President Drapkin,
Aye.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry,
Aye.
Committee Member Maxfield,
Aye.
Mayor Hill,
Aye.
and Chair Minke.
Aye. So we have 2 nays and the rest are ayes. Let's see.
Correct. 12 to 2.
12 to 2, yeah. So the motion is carried and we adopt the budget. You want to go on, Jeff?
Well, so technically, the next thing you do is adjourn this meeting and then convene your Urban Renewal Agency meeting. We do have that budget to do as well. I want to take this opportunity to again acknowledge the finance team, the executive team, all the staff members who have been engaged in the budget preparation this year as in every year. This is one of the more challenging budgets that I have been a part of over the course of my long career, and I appreciate the seriousness and the intensity and the focus that people were able to bring to the table through more of these rotten Zoom meetings than you would ever want to have. It's really hard to do something like this on a flat screen and not to be able to engage with your peers and colleagues. I also want to give my sincerest thanks to the Council and Budget Committee for your attention, to your focus, your willingness to do this more hours than you might have expected when you signed up for the job. And I appreciate your service to the community and your support of the community as well. Thank you so much.
And I, at this point, adjourn the meeting. And then I want to...
Mayor, just, I'm sorry, Councilor Menke. Councilor Chenoweth did have his hand up. Sorry about that. I missed that.
Okay, Councilor Chenoweth.
Thank you, Chair Menke and Jeff. I appreciate you catching that. This may be an odd request, but would it be possible to get contact information on the Budget Committee members sent to us, please?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Please take very seriously under advisement
yeah, I got it. I know, I get the serial meeting laws. I'm not gonna extend past the numbers of safety. And I also want to say thank you for all the effort that was put into this mammoth document that was presented to us. It had to have been many man hours that brought that to us. So thank you very much for that, and to the members of the committee for your time in this meetings. Thank you.
Actually, Chair Chris, it was many women hours.
Fair enough. I apologize. I did not mean to be.
One guy in finance. But that's okay. There's always the city manager, you know. Okay. I want to thank everybody, and we're going to go on to the next meeting. So I'd like to adjourn this one. So we are adjourned. And welcome everybody. We are now at the Urban Renewal District, City of McMinnville budget meeting number 1. Who knows? We might go another night. Let's see. What I need to do is ask the city recorder to take the roll call.
Committee Member Haas.
Present. Sorry.
Councilor Garvin.
Here.
Committee Member Hart.
Here.
Councilor Geary.
Here.
Committee Member Hofstadter.
Here.
Councilor Chenoweth.
Present.
Committee Member Seiler.
Here.
Councilor Peralta.
Here.
Committee Member Phoenix.
Here.
Council President Drapkin.
Here.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry.
Here.
Committee Member Maxfield.
Here.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
And Chair Minke.
Here. Amanda, would you please explain the process of electing a budget chair for the Urban Renewal Committee budget hearing?
Yes, thank you, Chair Menke. So similar to what we did for the budget, the City Budget Committee, we're going to be doing the same election process for the Urban Renewal District's chair. So we're going to begin with the nominations for the position of the chair. Any committee member may nominate another member. Committee members can also nominate themselves. Nominations do not have to be seconded. If a nominee does not wish to be considered, that person can decline the nomination. When nominations stop, the chair will call for any more nominations. When no other nominations are forthcoming, the chair will state that nominations are closed. Once the nominations are closed, the chair will state the names of the nominees. Each member must state their vote for the chair. If one person receives a majority of the vote, the chair will declare the result of the vote. If no one receives a majority of the vote must be done again. No person can be eliminated as a nominee, but any nominee can withdraw their nomination. The voting will continue until one person receives a majority of the vote.
Hey, thank you, Amanda. So I call for nominations for the chair of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee.
So I nominate Kelly Minke to be chair of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee.
Thank you, Cherry. Do we have a sec? Oh, I guess we don't need a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, any further nominations one more time? All right, nominations are closed. The nominees for the chair are Kelly Minke. City Recorder will now conduct a roll call vote of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee for election of the chair.
Committee Member Haas,
Yes.
Councilor Garvin,
Aye.
Committee Member Hart,
Yes.
Councilor Geary,
I vote Menke.
Committee Member Hofstadter,
Yes.
Councilor Chenoweth,
Yes, and may we please get to see everybody again.
Committee Member Sealer,
Yes.
Councilor Peralta,
Aye.
Committee Member Phoenix,
Yes.
Council President Drapkin,
Aye.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry,
Yes.
Committee Member Maxfield,
Yes.
Mayor Hill,
Here.
Chair Minke.
Yes. So I believe it's unanimous. 14 votes for Kelly Minke. All right. So moving right along. Let's see. I am asking for the approval of the May 18th Urban Renewal Area Budget Committee meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes, assuming everyone's taken a look at those.
I so move.
I'm sorry, Meredith?
I so move.
Meredith?
That was Cherry and Zach seconds.
Okay. Cherry and Zach. Okay. Thank you, Zach. All right. Cherry moved, Zach seconded. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, the ayes have it unanimously. 14. All right. The budget, the May 18th, 2020 Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting minutes have passed unanimously by 14 in favor. Okay. Presentation of the budget message by the city manager. Please call, well, Hayes. Jeff, it's your turn again.
Thank you, Chair Minke, members of the Budget Committee. The Urban Renewal Agency budget is convened a separate agency, so you are now serving in your role as Budget Committee for the Urban Renewal Agency and are required to do so by law as a separate legal entity. Briefly, I will remind you that this urban renewal district, which encompasses downtown and the extension of the Granary District out Alpine Avenue, is in its 8th year. Revenues continue to grow based on investments that have been made in the district. Notable investments include the Atticus Hotel, the Two Dogs Tap House and Tributary, the Mac Market, and others. The district's value has increased by $32.3 million since its establishment in fiscal year 12-13. This fiscal year, our budget that's proposed to you includes expenditures just over $480,000. We are happy to answer questions tonight and ultimately recommend that you approve the Urban Renewal Agency budget. If you'd like to, we can unshare the screen at this point to get more folks on screen during the question and conversation as you like.
Okay, in regard to this, is there anyone in the audience that would like to share testimony on the proposed budget? Public testimony received through the city website on or before May 17th, 2021 has been distributed to committee members. All public testimony received prior to the meeting will be added to the public record of the meeting. Okay, so we're now going to review and discuss the proposed Urban Renewal 21-22 budget. Does anyone have any comments or questions for the city manager just to start out with in regard to his letter or his statements? Once, twice? It's not like there's a lot of pages here, guys. All right, so we're now looking at the Urban Renewal Fund, and it goes from page 10 to page 11. Any questions? I think it's, wait a minute, I take it back, page 13, 10 to 13. Questions? I see none. Okay. And then we have page 14 to the end, which is page 17. Any questions? Looking. I don't see any questions. Once, twice. I believe that we have accomplished the discussion.
We have the screen up with the motion again, Scott.
Oh, Kelly?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, this is Jerry. I just had a question. The Third Street improvements, what's the status of those? I guess I've kind of lost track of that whole process.
So just a technical issue before we launch into that. Chair Menke, can you ask if there are any members of the Budget Committee who need to disclose a conflict of interest,
I
please?
thought that was what I was reading, but then I didn't see it again. Yes, is there anyone that has any disclosures they need to make? Zach, do you need to, or anybody?
I have a question about that. Would being a downtown property owner constitute any kind of a conflict?
Amanda?
I would turn to Amanda for that.
Amanda?
Did we lose Amanda?
We might have.
I think.
I'm thinking maybe.
Chair
Okay,
Menke, wouldn't it be?
She's on her way back.
Oh. I was going to suggest a potential conflict of interest rather than an actual conflict.
Yeah, I believe that simply the act of owning property does not constitute a conflict of interest.
No, just a potential one.
There is the potential more related to specific or discrete actions that the urban renewal agency or city council might take to the benefit of individual properties, but I will defer to Amanda for an official legal opinion on that question. Did you hear the question, Amanda?
Yeah, the question was about whether or not it's an actual or potential conflict of interest about owning property.
Correct.
In the urban, yeah, it's not an actual conflict of interest. So if you declare it, you can still vote. As a potential conflict of interest, you can still vote.
Thank you, Sal. And thank you, Amanda. Okay, anyone else have a problem? Chris, or yes?
Abundance of caution, I should say that I think my family owns property within this area.
Okay, thank you.
I would declare a potential conflict in that case.
Jerry, Chris, and okay. All right.
Sorry to interrupt. I think we can go ahead with questions and discussion as you like. We do have. There needs to hold on. We're going to get a motion up here for you, if you're ready to do that.
Yes, I'm ready to do that.
Oops.
Chair Menke, I think Budget Committee Member Hart had a question about the Third Street Improvement Project. Do we want to answer that?
Go ahead. Thank you. We've got too many things going here.
So the Third Street Improvement Project is going into conceptual design here very shortly. And we're moving forward with trying to secure, so we have 150,000 in next year's budget, 50,000 in our current year budget for moving towards construction documents for the project. The Urban Renewal Agency and the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee have discussed this and decided that if we can get 30% construction documents for the project done over the next 18 to 24 months, we might be in a good position to leverage it for infrastructure funding that's coming from the federal government to match the urban renewal funding to actually implement the project. We don't have all the funds to do the architectural and engineering for 30% construction documents, so we have submitted that project to the state for some additional funds to match what we have. We haven't heard yet if that's been approved. but we will be starting we are underway in contract negotiations to start conceptual design.
Yeah, that was submitted and testified for, so. Other questions? A lot going on in this committee, so I'm just asking. All right, if we're ready for a motion.
I suggest recognizing Jennifer for this part.
Jennifer, do you want to give us the information on the motion?
Yeah, thanks. And I'll figure out how to get my hand down after. So there is a staff suggested amendment to this. I missed the fact that when we pushed this out to publish, we did not put any dollars in contingency. All of the excess fund balance went into ending fund balance. And I would suggest that $100,000 be moved out of ending fund balance into contingency, so that in the event that sometime this year there become funds available that we might want to have a match available for, or some other unknown happening with projects, that it gives us the flexibility to be able to move on those financially during the upcoming year. So that suggested staff amendment is included in the language that I think will be posted for the motion. So
it's for account 9959-05.
Yes, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. So that would reduce the ending fund balance. Well,
right, by the same 100, correct.
Okay, do we have the motion on the screen yet? Yay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have a motion. Well, I need someone to make a motion. Who would that be?
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the urban renewal agency budget for 2021-2022, increasing the contingency category to 100,000 from 0, and decreasing the ending balance from to 155,030 from 255,030. And so that would be my motion.
Second.
Who is that, Sal or somebody?
Chris, I think beat me to it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, so Scott Hill moved and Chris Chenoweth seconded. Do we also need to read the bottom part? The committee has approved for tax correct increment of the maximum. Sorry, I can't read it. Amount.
So we've posted that publicly as the proposed motion. Is it the intent of the motion to include all of the language that's on the screen?
Yes, it is.
And that's the intent of the second as well?
Yes.
Then we're good, I think.
Yeah.
All right, then I need to have Claudia please poll the council, or please poll the budget committee, and by name.
Committee Member Haas.
Jerry?
I thought that was.
I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute. Yes. I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Councilor Garvin.
Yes.
Committee Member Hart.
Yes.
Councilor Geary.
Yes.
Committee Member Hofstadter.
Yes.
Councilor Chenoweth.
Yes.
Committee Member Styler.
Yes.
Councilor Peralta.
Aye.
Committee Member Phoenix.
Pause.
Was that yes?
It was opposed.
Oh, no, okay. Thank you.
Council President Drapkin.
Aye.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry.
Yes.
Committee Member Maxfield.
Yes.
Mayor Hill,
Yes.
and Chair Minke.
Yes. We have one no and 13 ayes. And I believe that pretty much closes out the evening. Is there any other questions or comments you'd like to make before Meredith?
I was just wondering if there was a way for us to find out why some people chose to oppose. I would be curious to know if there's information that I didn't understand. And also, if a majority opposed it, what would happen? Would it go back to the staff? Would we give them a formal, say, work on X, Y, or Z? I'm just curious moving forward since I'm new to this.
So I can answer that that last part of the question. We would stay here until you meet. I mean, if there was no support for the budget, we would ask for amendments to the budget. We would stay here as long as it took to get a budget passed, whatever changes might need to be made.
And we have done that.
What'd you say, Cherry?
I said, and we have done that.
Yes, we have. Okay. I don't see a great deal further business. I can't compel the person that said no to speak. If she wants to, she may, but so I'm basically saying we are done here and I'm closing the meeting. And I thank you all so much for your work. The staff is fabulous. Jennifer and her team is fabulous. And you guys, for all showing up tonight, really impressed me. Thank you so much. I don't think I've ever been at a budget meeting where everybody showed. So congratulations.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Good night.